Uh, all right, so I'm talking with Mike Alexander, and Mike is one of the founders of the well-known Tea Party movement in America. He started one of the first chapters, perhaps the first chapter in the country, in 2009 in Pasadena, California, and I got to know him while covering the Tea Party movement there for the Pasadena Weekly, and we became friends. And when we started Radio Titans in 2012, Mike came aboard, and was a very pioneering thing at the time to have somebody, forgive me, Mike, but really generationally, you were, a couple generations above where a lot of the comics were and all that. And so for you to
Right.
come into the atmosphere in Hollywood where we had like a building that had a drug den in it, unbeknownst to us.
Yeah, I remember.
A methadone clinic down the hall, and all
Oh,
sorts
yeah.
of things. And you would show up in your suit and tie, and you would come on, and you hosted a great show that got your message across. You were hoping to reach your followers every week. We didn't really manage to deliver a mass audience, as is the problem with, we're admitting everything in our story, but nonetheless, I think it was a really interesting exercise. What did you think of? What are your memories of working with us and of doing the show?
Oh, well, I have many memories. And first of all, I want to say how happy I am that you're doing this project. And, and I don't know whether this ends up on Netflix, but as a consumer of media, I think that Netflix and others are doing a great job on documentaries that are, shall we say, off the beaten path or a
Yeah,
narrow channel. And, and what they're doing over cable is not that dissimilar to what you were doing. That is finding ultimately a large market that is a series or an assembly of micro markets. So you were bringing on knowns and unknown comedians onto this early medium that is now known as podcast, live cast, YouTube, Rumble, whatnot. You were coming uh, on the digital revolution as it was developing shortly after Obama came to office in his first term. That coincided with a real emergence of things called YouTube, Twitter, Critter, all those oddball things that I'm still not that familiar with, except by necessity. So you guys saw that, and I'll offer say a broad conclusion first. Then we'll go back to the beginning here. I think that you were not only there at the dawn of the new communications revolution with a ever more powerful internet that gave you broadcasting capability, formerly held only by networks and large communication centers or institutions. I think we're still at the dawn of these communications, Carl. I think that there are tons of people out there trying to figure it out. You have figures. We know YouTube and the big giants, but what they discovered has attracted competition, and still we have people. How about Joe Rogan? Yeah, he
yeah,
was a small player, a bit player. That guy recently moved over to what? Sirius, picked up $100 million contract, and as far as I know, he's the biggest guy to come out of the call it the podcast environment. A guy who started off on remote, non-network broadcast and then moved to the big time. Everybody else who was a big podcaster already had a significant presence on terrestrial radio. Rush Limbaugh, Hannity, Bongino, who's it? Howard Stern. He developed podcast type things, and what you were doing was following in the tradition of local cable broadcasts that started off as early as the 80s, when cable companies went into local cities to get a franchise and had to make time on the cable channel for local clubs, activists, oddballs, the city itself, or whatever it happened to be. And all of that programming was put on late at night. It was hidden. You guys continued that tradition, but then mainstreamed it. And what I thought that you did that was original and interesting was that you tapped into the comedian market, and you not only provided entertainment, but you were providing a service for comedians because they had, and other performers, because they had uh, 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 perhaps no way to archive their material. So you were providing an audience for them, providing a context for them, and all these archives. And it turns out that old jokes are always funny, right? I mean, we go back, we look at Carson, we look at anybody who did or said something funny. Well, you guys were doing that, and you created an archive at the same time, and a little bit of a community. So instead of the comedy club, you were doing Radio Titans. Talk about an ambitious title, but you had a vision that I think is still compelling and is still evolving. Nobody has figured this out yet. I don't care how big they are. Nobody has figured out yet the marvels of a high-speed connection. And right now, almost anybody in America in an up-to-date urban area can get a 1 gigabyte or gigabyte per second signal, shall we say, over the internet, and you can be as fast as anybody else. So, marvels have happened, and that product is still out there evolving. I could talk much more about it from some of my clients and friends who have been working in that area too. Nobody's figured it out. But what I thought that you guys did early on was original and compelling. And of course, when you presented that to me, you and I, of course, were friends, and we would talk about projects and whatnot. And then it was pretty clear that what you had developed was a broadcasting tool, which was neither liberal nor conservative. It wasn't about comics. It was about communications. And it was a broadcasting channel that was available to anybody. And so you suggested that I develop something, and I started Radio Free Los Angeles, and we started doing some remote broadcasts, and we were talking about public issues, and we were going down there to that rat trap down there in Hollywood, and braving. You go in there, you can smell the dope. You had bums sleeping in there. No offense to Jake, we had joke, applause line. Jake, we love you, man. But it was a real seat of the pants operation that produced some really good product. And so in the course of that, I ended up, we had some fun. And a couple of times you invited me to stay after for the next hour, where you had comedians, mostly of the left-wing variety. And we would sit in there and talk and joke and just have a heck of a lot of fun. And because even though we were left and right and all that, it wasn't mean. We sit in there, have fun. We joke back and forth. We talk. I just thought it was a lot of fun. And you enjoyed yourself, and everybody who was there enjoyed themselves. So I think you really set the tone conversationally when you were the host. I was, of course, the host on my own thing, but that's where you and I also started doing, learn how to work with each other. You're a conservative guy, which was interesting. You most of your other talent were basically a bunch of left-wing nutcases, right? Dope
Yeah.
smokers and God knows what. You're a conservative guy, obviously I am, but you set the tone and everybody had fun entertaining. It was just a lot of fun. We remembered what these broadcasting companies seem to forget right now. It's about the audience. And you can disagree without being disagreeable. You can sit there and have fun with people. You can enjoy yourself. So we did. That's a little bit long, but there's a little bit of the background of how we got started.
Yeah. Well, I guess you covered just about everything I could possibly think of in that answer.
Yeah.
But also with regard to when we have the fallout,
Yeah.
I went to you because you were probably our top customer as far as ability to pay us, and also because I saw you as a wise mentor kind of a figure, and I didn't know how to resolve anything at that moment with Jake, and we
Yeah.
went down to your office and kind of put you in the middle of it all. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, as you know, I think it's no secret among those who knew you guys at that time that Jake was having some personal problems. And, we could just leave it at that. But those personal problems, if you guys want to talk about it, or Jake wants to talk about it, that's great. I think he will. In fact, probably better let him tell the story. Otherwise, it may sound like sour grapes over on your side or whatnot. But Jake was having some problems, and it spilled over into the show itself. And for example, we weren't sure what kind of audience we were getting. The guy just fell apart, and it hurt the show because he was the technical guy, getting things out onto the internet, monitoring the broadcasts and the hits. And for me, as a commercial customer, I wasn't there to create an archive so that I could tell a club owner, hey, if you want to know how good I am, I got some material up there on Radio Titans. All right, well, that wasn't the service I was looking for. I was using it as a new and novel way of reaching out to citizens and concerned citizens and Tea Party members, if you will, in the greater Los Angeles area. And I wanted to get them communicate with them a different way than sending out emails and all that sort of thing. So I wasn't getting the numbers that I needed, and the operation wasn't as professional as it needed to be. Certainly, it was on your part, but at the operations level wasn't coming through. We met with him and ultimately secured your own ability to move forward with the concept and move forward with the Radio Titans title and move on to the next phase of your development, which was much more successful. And that, I think, was when you went downtown to your studio in downtown Los Angeles, and had a pretty good run down there.
Yeah.
It was it was good. So he wasn't terribly shall we say cooperative. Hell, he couldn't even hear what we were talking about. Through that haze that he was in, right? Yeah, he was a mess. Poor guy. He was just a mess. So as Jake the Flake, as I came to know him affectionately, but
I was at fault on things as well. So, it definitely wasn't a one-way street or whatever. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, you guys were running a shoestring operation.
Yeah.
And it was a startup. It had all the problems that any startup business had. Great concept, pretty good execution, right?
Yeah.
But you needed money to do marketing. You needed better equipment. You had to hang on your lease. Too many things had to happen It's like anybody's listening to this who's ever been in Hollywood, whoever started a restaurant, whoever tried to package a product, anybody would be interested in this documentary will know exactly what happened. And it probably happened to 80% of the people who are listening to this
Yeah.
documentary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
nothing new. Here's what you were doing. Wish, a kiss, and a promise, trying to make it happen,
Yeah.
and you got a lot of experience.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, hang on. I'm going to stop.
Sure.